Whenever you learn a new programming language or development platform, it's traditional to create an application that says "Hello World," that outputs a simple string to the screen. I'll show you how to do this in the context of creating a brand new Flex project and Flex application, and along the way I'll show you how Flash Builder 4 helps you get the job done. Open Flash Builder 4. You'll see the Start page shown in the central area. The Start page includes links to various documentation resources, including videos and online documentation. Of special note is a link labeled Moving from Flex 3 to Flex 4. If you've been working with Flex 3, I encourage you to explore this area of the documentation. Every Flex application is stored in a Flex project in Flash Builder. So to get started, create a brand new Flex project. Go to the menu and select File, New, Flex Project. In the New Flex Project dialog box, type in the name of your project. I'll name my project Hello World. Your project by default is placed in an area known as the workspace. A workspace is a folder on your hard disk which contains configuration information for your copy of Flash Builder. By default, a new project is placed under the workspace folder, and you'll see that on Windows 7, the workspace folder by default is set to C:\users, then the username, which on my computer is administrator, and then Adobe Flash Builder 4. You'll see a similar path on Mac OS X, and a slightly different path if you're working on Windows XP. Accept the default location of the project, and go to the application type. You set the application type to indicate whether the application will be deployed through the web running in Adobe Flash Player, or to the desktop as a native application running on Adobe Air. I'll accept the default setting of a web application. The next setting has been added in Flash Builder 4 to this dialog. It allows you to choose the particular version of the Flex Software Developers Kit that you want to use to build this application. The default is the new Flex 4 SDK. If you like, you can still use Flash Builder 4 to build Flex 3 applications. You would select Use a specific SDK, and then choose the included Flex 3.5 SDK, which requires Flash Player 9 or higher. We're going to be building Flex 4 applications in this video series, so I'll use the default SDK. The next option allows you to select an application server. Flash Builder 4 has integration capabilities with 4 application servers: ASP.NET, ColdFusion, J2EE applications such as Lifecycle Data Services and BlazeDS, and PHP. In Flash Builder 4, you can add server configuration information to a project after the project has been created. That's a new feature of the product. But for this Hello World application, we don't need any application server functionality, so I'll leave application server type set to None or Other. And then I'll click Next. On this screen, you're asked for the name of the output folder. The output folder is where the debug version of your application is built during the compilation process. The default is a folder named bin-debug under the project's root folder. You can change this if you like, but it's important to note that this folder will contain only the debug version of your application, a version where the application Swift file is significantly larger than the version you'll deploy, because it contains debug symbols and lots of meta information. I'll accept the default setting for the output folder and click Next. On this screen, I'm asked what component set I want to use. I can either choose the default, MX plus Spark, which means that I'm using both the older components from Flex 3, now known as the MX components, and a set of components that are new to Flex 4, known as the Spark components. If you're building a Flex 3 application, select MX only, and that will make your application Swift file significantly smaller. The Framework Linkage option allows you to define how your application will be built, either as a single monolithic Swift file or as a smaller Swift file with linked Swift files known as runtime shared libraries. I'll talk more about that option in another video. The Build Path Library section asks you where existing code is that you want to incorporate into your application. By default, there's a section called Flex 4.0, which refers to files in the SWIC format. These are precompiled component libraries, which collectively contain the entire Flex SDK. The build path libraries also refer to a folder named libs. This is a folder where you can drop your own precompiled component libraries or SWIC files and any code within those libraries will automatically be available to your Flex project. There are some other options below that configure the compilation process. The main source folder is the name of the folder under the project root where you'll create your main application files. And the main application file by default is set to the same name as the project itself, but with a .mxml extension. You can name this file anything you want, but there are certain conventions that you must follow and others that you should follow. The name of the application will become the name of an ActionScript class in the background, and so you want to use class naming conventions. You can use letters, numbers, and underscores, but you must start with an alphabetical letter, and by convention, the initial character should be uppercase. The output folder URL option indicates where the browser will navigate to when you test the application from Flash Builder. When you leave this value blank in an application that does not use an application server, it will result in loading the application from the local hard disk at runtime. That will be fine for most testing purposes. But if you want to incorporate a simple web server, you can place the output folder underneath the web server's document root and then put in an equivalent URL here. I'll click Finish to create the new project and the new application. Once the project and application have been built, the new application opens in the editor region in Flash Builder. On my system, the application opened in source mode. That means that I can see the actual source code of the application. I'll click the Design button, and that will switch the application over to a WYSIWYG, or what you see is what you get appearance. And this will allow me to do a little bit of visual design by dragging and dropping objects into the application. Now, in the lower left corner, there's a view named Components. The name is hidden a little bit because of the size of my screen. But this view allows you to select and drag components into your application. I'll scroll down a bit and locate the label component, and I'll drag it into place in the application. With the component still selected, I'll go to the Properties view in the lower right corner. I'll set the text property of the label component to Hello World. I'll then click into the font size control, which is under the text section, and set it to a size of 18. And then I'll click this icon, which will cause the control to be bold. Now I'll go back to source mode and show you the result. A label control placed in a specific position on the screen because of these two properties, X and Y. The text property has been set to a value of Hello World. A style named Font Size has been set to a value of 18, which means 18 pixels. And the font weight has been set to a value of bold. I'm going to change the values of the X and Y properties manually to 100 pixels each, and that means that the label will be placed 100 pixels from the left and 100 pixels from the top. I'll then save my file by pressing Ctrl+S on Windows or Command+S on Mac. Then I'll run my first application in the browser by going to the menu and choosing Run, and then scrolling down Hello World. After a few moments, the application opens in the browser and shows the Hello World message. Now this may look like an HTML page, and in fact, if you look at the URL in the browser, you'll see that it's loaded an HTML file. But the HTML file is simply a wrapper for Flash Player, and it's Flash Player that's rendering this text. I can tell that by right-clicking anywhere on the surface of the application, and I'll see the Flash Player 10 About screen. So that's your Hello World application. In another video, I'll describe the anatomy of this application a little more carefully, describing not just the code in the application, but also the structure and names of the files that are compiled and generated by the Flex SDK.